Hello, and welcome to another episode of Social Workers Rise. It is your host, Catherine, here. I am here today with Earvin Casciano. Did I say your last name right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, perfect. And we're going to talk about his experience. You may have recognized his name if you're an OG to the podcast, because he was on here a couple years ago where we did an episode together on military social work, and I will link that in the show notes too. But he's come a long way, and he was sharing with me kind of offline how this whole conversation came up. Was he finally found a place to work that he enjoys. So I wanted to learn more about his quest of finding the ideal workplace for him and what that experience was like and some lessons learned along the way. Because I know there's a lot of new graduates out there who are kind of worried, kind of leery about getting into the field of social work. And Irvin, I'm hoping that you have some tips that might be able to help some new grads out there.
That is the plan. That is always the hope for me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and what you do.
Yes, thank you well, first of all, Catherine, thank you for having me on the podcast again. Again, it's always a pleasure to stay in contact with you. We've connected initially at the Millennial Social Work Conference eons ago, feels like. Uh, so I am a recent graduate of the College of Social Work from Florida State University. I graduated in May 2025, and then I took my LSW exam, which is the master's level equivalency of the social work profession. And it's important to just realize that the LSW and LMSW is the same thing. Every state does it differently. Um, and I took that exam in June, passed it, got my license in July. So now I am a licensed social worker, and then I am actually resuming supervision for my clinical hours. Actually, this coming Monday, actually, for the first time in a while. But I took a little time and a little while to find my footing as a newly minted social worker. I started at a residential substance use facility that ended up not being a good fit for me for many reasons, professionally and personally. And then I went into a community health center, which was better, but that still wasn't quite the right fit for both personal reasons and professional reasons. And now I'm a full-time group facilitator at a mental health and substance use PHP, IOP, and OP treatment facility here on the coast of Jersey. I'm living in Jersey now. I lived in Atlanta, I think the first time that we connected and while I was in grad school. And they do part-time individual therapy on the side as a side hustle, um, as an additional source of income for me. So that's where I get my feet wet with my individual therapy skills with that. But I do 2 groups a day, 5 days a week, for an hour and a half each group session, and then I do the notes, and then I plan the groups. I'm always thinking about new ways to engage clients, and then we have clients coming in, coming out, as the nature of working in treatment centers. And I think a big part of what geared me towards group therapy in the first place, because in my experience, there's a lot of social workers out there who actually don't like group therapy. They prefer individual therapy, and they're like, I can't imagine doing group therapy. I would be so nervous, so many different things. But I think because my internship was at a treatment center where my mentor was a group facilitator, and that was her main job, I think I learned from her, and I had more experience with doing groups during my internship when I was a clinical social worker student. And I think that's kind of what led me to it initially. And after I graduated, I always was in jobs that did group therapy, but I was doing group therapy and individual therapy at the same location. And it was a lot. And I was also doing case management, and it was just a lot of aspect of it and just the documentation. So it's a lot. easier where I'm not pulled in so many different directions. And I'm very, very happy as a result because I'm more comfortable in group therapy spaces for a multitude of reasons.
I love that. And thank you for sharing your experience. So I'm hearing you first started out within the addiction field, and then you went over to community mental health. And then your third job was, it sounds like a hybrid of both, where it's addiction and mental health, and you're doing primarily groups. So it sounds like it wasn't necessarily the niche or the issue or the, oh, I say the population that you're working with that was the challenge for you, but maybe it sounds more like it was the structure of the organization as far as your workload, the caseload, the unrealistic expectations, and you found a place that kind of combines everything that you love the most into one. And so now you just get to focus on group facilitating, and you don't have all the other noise going on as far as with the case management and individual and all of the things. You can just focus in on what you're most passionate about. Is that right?
Exactly, exactly. It's also when you do individual therapy, you have to worry about treatment plans, you have to worry about safety planning, you have to worry about the individual documentation. On top of that, you have to worry about like family contact notes as well. If that's part of the purview of the employer and the job, obviously this is take this with a grain of salt because it will depend on the workplace that you're in.
Sure.
And also another big caveat that I learned is at least in the clinical realm, which is where I want to start my career and where I'm in right now, unfortunately, it also depends on like what the employer like what insurance does the employer take. So
Mm,
right now the treatment center that I work in, we're privately funded, we're privately owned, and we're not Medicaid or Medicare funded. And the community health center was that I was at was like that. And then my substance use residential facility was also very much like that. And unfortunately, you have those facilities where the need is high, yes, but caseloads typically tend to be very, very high and unrealistic in those areas. Also, the pay rate for you as a clinician, especially just starting out, might not be the highest either. And so that those two things together are really a recipe for, possible negative consequences where we have a lot of burnout in our field and we need more social workers coming into this field. And for those who are newly graduates, just like me, who have like a little bit of like the apple in our eye, we're still like, looking at social work with the rose-colored glasses still. That can be a very, very humbling and tough challenge to navigate, which could lead us to burning out almost immediately right when we get started, which is something that is an unfortunate reality in our profession.
yeah, I've heard that. I've heard the statistics that the average social worker burns out after 3 years, but I think it's much, much shorter than that. I don't know if they've done studies on it recently, but it's almost like you go through your master's program and you're operating off adrenaline because you're just so excited and you're ready to get out there and
Hmm.
hop right into it. And then you
Yep.
do, and you're like, well, shit, this kind of sucks. This is really hard. And
Hmm.
I've seen being in this field since 2009, and it's really messed up, and nobody tells new grads this, but they give the hardest jobs to new grads, like jobs that I wouldn't take as an LCSW because it is so hard and it's backwards in the field. It's not right, but it is what it is. That's just what happens. And so I like that you mentioned that because I don't, I think you and I are saying the same thing. Like, we don't want people to get so disillusioned that they leave the field and that
Hmm.
they burn
And I
out.
had a very good friend of mine when I was in grad school, even before grad school in my program, and I was to do accounting, I believe. And she did it because she needed to do that because if she stayed in the field and she was very open and vulnerable with me, she's like, Irvin, I would have left if I stayed in the field. And now she's back in it, thankfully. But that's unfortunately how we lose so many great social workers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what would be your advice to somebody who is finding that self in that position? Like maybe they graduated within the past year and they're kind of struggling with where they're at. What would you say to someone like that?
First of all, give yourself grace. There's a CBT concept of a worry time, of like a worry timer. So, you can let yourself have 30 minutes a day to feel all your emotions and your feelings. Take an honest assessment of asking yourself, am I really happy? Does this setting speak to me, speak to how I want to be as a social worker, which is so, so important when you're considering we're just coming out into the field. But many of the social workers, that even when I was in my program, many of them were twice my age, and they had previous careers, so they kind of already have an idea of what kind of worker they are and kind of what workspaces they have. So if you have that experience, even though it's a different field, tap into some of those things because some of those things fundamentally they don't change because that's based on your values, that's based on, life circumstances, location, everything else like that. And also just think about your internship experiences. Did you have two internship experiences like me, or were you in the advanced studying program where you had one? And how happy were you in that internship? What did you like about that internship? What didn't you like about that internship? Um, I had many TAs, and many TAs are good, and TAs are actually a great resource. So if you're in your program now and you have two TAs in your classes, which for the most part you pretty much have at least one in almost every class, definitely reach out to them and talk to them about what their experience is and research what kind of social work it is you would be interested in. I was lucky where I was overseas and I did 3 years of informational interviews and research in the field of social workers, reading The Days of the Lives of Social Work by Linda Gottman. And that was like a 52 chapter book of like 52 different areas where you can job shadow and you can figure out what area of social work you want to go into because our field, believe it or not, for the people who are not in the field and even the people who are going into the field, our field is so vast and broad. There's so many different avenues of it. And it's one of the reasons why I love social work more than LPCs and more than LMFTs and all those other counseling professions. All due respect to them, I love them. I have very, very good friends who are like that, but they don't have the holistic and just options that we do with our MSW. That's just the reality of the situation. So taking an honest assessment of yourself, leaning on your experiences, talking to friends, talking to family, talking to professors, and just being okay to say no or ask the right questions in the interview process. Now, one of my go-to questions in any interview that I have is describe the work culture. What's the average caseload like? What is the day-to-day expectations of my role? Um, what is the um supervision? Is supervision required? Because that's a big one. That's a big barrier for a lot of social work professionals, especially new grads, because supervision's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And my mentors always told me if you had a job offer and that was a lower salary but had free supervision included in your benefits, that's a positive. So that's something else as well to look into, and those are some of the questions that I would probably ask.
Yes, I love that. Listener, I hope you are taking notes. And if you're not, you need to go grab something to write with because Irvin just gave you a whole journaling activity to do to have some self-reflection time to figure out what is it that you need in your workplace. Hey, it's Catherine here. I hope you are enjoying this episode. We're going to take a quick break to listen to these ads from our sponsors. Hey, social workers, are you looking for clinical supervision or hoping to offer it? Check out Rise Directory. It's the national hub connecting associate social workers with licensed clinical supervisors, making it super easy to find your right match in your state. Head over to risedirectory.com and see how it can help you grow in your career. You know, a lot of social workers think their employer's insurance has them covered, but here's the thing. That policy is really there to protect the organization, not you. That's why I always recommend having your own coverage with a trusted organization such as HPSO. Their professional liability insurance is designed for social workers and it follows you wherever you work. It's peace of mind you just can't put a price on. Check them out at hpso.com/swrise. I remember thinking back to when I first got into the field that I would have this mentality that I didn't want to fail, that I got this job. And yes, I'm so grateful that this job, and I'm not going to fail. I'm not a quitter, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to
Yep.
stick this out because I'm not a
Yep.
quitter and I'm not going to give up. But
Yep.
no, don't be like me. Don't do that
No. And I
because
did that myself actually too.
yeah, it's so
And
common.
it is very, very common, but and I tell my clients at the workplace that working with in group therapy now, failure's not a bad thing. It's really what all my major successes and achievements in life stem from my failures. And because what you're doing is you're learning about what's not working for you. So
Exactly, which
you're
I don't even
so you're
see that as a
gaining self, so
failure.
you're growing and you're gaining self-awareness, and that is the ultimate power card in
Yeah,
our field.
yeah,
So
for
that would
sure.
be my advice would be definitely don't be afraid to fail and don't be afraid to ask questions. And also don't be afraid to figure out what your ideal salary bandwidth is, because that's a reality. You can negotiate your salary. For those of you who don't know, that is important to do.
Yes.
Um,
And you
and
should always try to negotiate your salary every single
yes,
time.
yes. And I understand that we live in, we're in a field of about 85% female, and I know that's more like a more of a male thing to do typically in job interviews.
Now, we're
We need to be
changing
paid what
that.
we're worth. Yeah. Oh, as social workers, we need to be paid what we're worth, period. And we'll all
Absolutely.
know. Um, that would be some of the things that I would do is in some of the, I mean, I didn't, I was still trying to figure out where I fit in this vast world of our profession that I was so excited and I worked so hard to be in. And I know where I'm at is not going to be my forever. It's not my end goal, but I'm figuring that out, and that is okay. Sometimes it's more important to be. Sometimes the most important place you can be is like right where your feet are. So, and then taking those experiences and learning as much as you can day by day and growing day by day. Like,
Absolutely.
can I grow in this job? Like, what are the growth opportunities? That's another question that I'm just thinking about now. Like, what are the opportunities for professional development? What are the opportunities for personal growth? Because not only do we have licensing and supervision, but we also have CEUs
Hmm.
that we have to pay for, and that's a whole field to navigate for ourselves. So not only we have licensure that depends on we have supervision. That's a lot to navigate, Catherine. That's a lot to navigate.
It is a lot. It is a lot. But I love the questions that you put out there. And I was taking notes because it's important that we really highlight what it is that we're looking for, because this is golden when we're going into interviews, when we finally land those interviews. And especially if we're in a place that we want to make an informed decision for ourselves. So even if we are desperate for a job, and I've been there, I'm just like, just give me a paycheck. I need something right now.
Hmm. Yep.
But at
Hmm.
least then we know what we're getting ourselves into and we can kind of mentally
Hmm.
prepare like this is not going to be my forever job. Yes, it's going to be great for this period of time, but it doesn't
Hmm.
have to be forever. So some of the questions that you recommend asking in the interview include what does the caseload look like? What does the day-to-day workload look like? What does the work culture look like? The pay rate, probably on the job description, but good to know what the pay rate is. If this includes supervision, and if the pay rate and the supervision numbers pan out for you. And then if there's growth opportunities and who's paying for the services? Is it insurance, Medi-Cal, private pay, um, all that? Did I cover everything?
yeah, I think you did. And maybe just seeing if you could talk to someone in that works there, because you could talk to I only had this in one other job that wasn't even social work. This was back in my nonprofit job, but one of my mentors now, and I love her to death. Um I remember before she hired me, she had me talk to one of the people who was gonna be my coworkers, and we just had a 15-minute conversation. And that was really, really impactful because you're going into a job and you don't really know anybody. So that's a good way to bridge that as well. And you could also get more information that's not from HR, that's not from someone who's an admin and potentially your supervisor who can give you a more down to earth, different perspective of the day-to-day grind of it. What are the expectations of the roles? And the other is another question. Because some job descriptions, unfortunately, are vague, and then they end up, you're getting onboarded, and then like, oh, I know we said we were gonna do documentation, and you were gonna do individual therapy, but we need you to do group therapy. Well, what if you never had done never? What if you never did group therapy before? So also ask not only what you want in a job, but also what you don't want in a job. What are your deal breakers? And excuse me. And when I was a career counselor for a little while, that was one of the questions that I would always ask my youth was, yes, we always ask what do you want to be when you grow up? What kind of jobs do you want to have? And what kind of jobs like light your soul on fire? But we also don't ask enough about what you don't want. And that's
Hmm.
another way to get to maybe where you want to be.
Yes, yes. So ask the questions in the interview, but also do the self-exploration for yourself to consider what kind of workplace do you work well in and what do you not work well in. And I would venture to say that if you do land a job or an internship that you don't like, to really dissect it with the questions that Irvin just gave you as far as what went well, what did you like, what lit you up, and then what didn't, what really irked you, what really rubbed you the wrong
Hmm.
way. That way
Hmm.
you have that information for yourself. And that's why I don't think any of these are failures. And I don't think anyone's a quitter, but it's
Yep.
learning more about yourself and saying it's okay to say, I tried this job, I was really excited for it, but it's just not for me. And that's
Hmm.
okay.
And that's honestly what internships are for. It's better to find that out in an internship at the start of your career
Hmm.
than a job that you've been in for 2 years, and then you feel stuck, and then it deteriorates your mental health, and then you end up burning out, and then you might, worst case scenario, just leave the profession altogether.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is another thing that people probably don't know. People can tell when you don't like your job, and it shows. It shows. The
Yeah,
clients
and I
pick
think
up
there's
on it, the
unfortunately
colleagues pick up
too
on it.
much. I think unfortunately there's too much of that in just the U.S. work culture in general. And I'm very fortunate where ever since I've been 23, for the most part, ever since, I mean, I'm about in my early 30s now, so almost about 10 years, I'm pretty happy with my career choices for the most part.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to say that I love what I do. And also, like, one of the things is, if you really have no idea, possibly, um, ask yourself, how would you spend your time in the field of social work if we live in a world without money? I know that's a very, very abstract and very unique question to ask, but that's one thing that I always ask. I always love asking people is, if we lived in a world without money, how would you spend your time? What would you do in the world of social work if we lived in a world without money? Because that would show you where your passions are, where what sets your soul on fire, and also where your values and priorities are. Because some people just want to do individual therapy at a private practice,
Hmm.
which is a great thing. But one of the TAs told me, Irvin, don't go into private practice right away
Mm.
because you're going to close yourself off to other settings and areas where you can take all that experience when you go into the private practice that will make you better, make the private practice better, and the clients that you'll help there better as well. And also private practice is always going to be there. It's not going to go
Absolutely
away.
agree. Yeah, absolutely agree. I've been doing private practice for 5 years now, and all of my experience, like all of it from the past 10, 15 years, working with kids, after school programs, hospitals, doctors' offices, even policy and advocacy, housing
Mhm.
programs.
Mhm.
So by being integrated into those systems, into the culture of those different areas that of life that we all experience or their clients experience, I'm able to much more effectively empathize with my clients and also give them direction and say, based on my experience, I've done medical social work for X number of years. These are the secrets that you need to say, or this is how you
Mhm.
need
How
to
to like
word it.
navigate insurance, for example, because you will probably have
Exactly.
a different answer to that to a client. If a client asks you how to navigate insurance, they would get a different answer between both and I with that because you have more experience with that, which
Right.
is the beautiful thing about it, for sure.
Yeah. And same thing, for example, if you work in schools, the school social workers know exactly what to say to get your kids the benefits or the services that they need when if you've never done that kind of work, you just would never know.
Especially with the way insurances are nowadays, where the prior authorizations they have to have such lingo. Even my group notes have to be so specifically like worded, and it's very interesting. And that's a whole other can of worms that we don't have time to get into. But that's just the reality of the situation, and you got to play the game for a little while.
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. I love this. Okay, so we covered questions to ask in an interview. We covered essentially how to find, I don't know, how to increase your self-awareness around the kind of work that you
Yeah,
like, you
how
don't
to find the
like.
jobs is do the research, do
Yeah,
informational interviews, rely on your experience with the internships and your professors and your classes. Did any of the classes really spark you? Maybe if, for example, maybe if you really like the grief and loss elective that you took in your program, maybe hospice might be more your thing. If you really enjoyed that. So let your electives, let your program, let your experiences, how you felt with your while you were in your MSW program and your internships, let all that stuff guide you.
right,
Because again, you're paying for the degree, yes, but you're also paying for the access to these professionals who a lot of times are at the top tier of their career fields. You're paying access to professors, you're paying access for the TAs. Go and make a conversation with them. Have a 15-minute informational interview about what their experience is, what they learned, what they wish they learned early on when they started. All that is just valuable information. And all that
yes.
will help you figure out where you want to be. My biggest thing is I'm happiest when I learned how to trust myself and I rely on my experience because my experience will tell me, and my experience in my gut will tell me what's right and what's not for me.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And highlight those experiences and those educational accomplishments too, because a lot of times new social workers tend to discount the internship or the classes that they take. But if you are enrolling in a very specific job field, like you mentioned hospice, right? I would fully emphasize, took a class on death and dying, have experience in
Hmm.
researching grief and loss,
Hmm.
have interviewed caregivers from hospice. I don't know, right? But like
Yep,
really, really take what you can and highlight the areas of your degree that directly relate to the job and role that you're applying for. So,
exactly. And it
love
also
it.
impact, like if you're interested in grief and loss and hospice, and that's really what you want to do, well, that makes your internship search a hell of a lot easier because now you just have an idea of where you want to go within that.
Right,
And you don't have to cast such a wide net, which is why people get so frustrated and so stressed out. You have to narrow it down to at least some degree because it makes it so much easier. I knew that I didn't want to, I knew that I wanted to be in a treatment center with military personnel. So that's why I went to that. But
yeah.
I made the connections and I networked and I constantly emailed people and I made progress and that's what I got. And I was able to reflect and really analyze that. And that's what that when you're in school, whether it's part-time or full-time, that's what you're in school to do when you have the time to do that when you're in your program. You have
Yes.
to you're only in grad school for at the most 3 years or 2 years or a year. That flies. You got to make sure
Yes.
that you maximize every day. It could be sending an email to somebody about I want to just do an informational interview. Sports social work is a new aspect of our field
Mm-hmm.
that not a lot of people know about. There's connections there that you can make, and you can just start with just making connections with people, and it helps you get to where you want to go. That's how I got my clinical internship was because um my network helped me find it. Yes, Florida State has a list in schools where I have a list of like internships or internship placements, and maybe even when you were in your program, maybe they had a list of like internship placements at the school that like previous students went to. But you could always add more to it, and you could always find
Absolutely.
a different one as well, and that's just part of the process for how to do it. So it's all very, very transferable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, we are just about at time. Do you have any other nuggets of advice for someone who is a new grad within the past year or about to graduate?
Well, first of all, give yourself a huge pat on the back and congratulations, and hopefully you take more time off than I did before jumping in to the field, especially if you were working on this for, 5 or more years. Um, but maybe when it gets tough, just remember your why as to why you're doing this. What made you become a social worker? What drove you to do that? What is your why? In my toughest moments of my life, and just personally and professionally, I've always remembered what my anchor was. And that anchor helped me stay centered. So if you ever have those feelings of, I don't know if I can do those, I don't know if I can do this, the self-doubt, potentially like, do I want to take a break from this? Remember your why and then lean into your support system. And the job, the first job out of grad school, I mean, I think you would be the exception as opposed to the rule where you'd have a job that's amazing that you love right out of grad school. I don't think a lot of us had that experience. I didn't, and Catherine, I don't know if you did. Um,
No, I didn't.
but take there's something that you can learn from every experience and just use that to prepare you to move forward. And always, especially as a new grad, think about what kind of professional and social worker you want to be.
Definitely. Definitely. I love
And
that.
and that will help you guide your compass and lead you to where you want to go.
Yes, yes. And you'd be surprised how many people are willing to help you when they see that you're passionate, that you're eager, that you're excited to
Mhm.
learn. People
Yep.
respond to that. So I already know some people's trying to discount themselves out, like, I don't want to bother people with my email. No, bother the people because they
Those are
love
the people
it.
you won't know. The worst that they can say is no.
Yeah, nothing lost.
And with networking and jobs, it's not about what you know. It's not about what you know, it's who you know.
Exactly. A
That's how I
hundred.
got the job that I have now. I stayed in touch with the HR, with one of the members of HR, and then we connected, and then it was like 3 week, 2.5 weeks, the whole process before I reached out to them and I had the interview and then I got
That's
hired. So it was very, very fast. It was very, very quick. But I didn't burn that. But I kept in touch. I didn't burn that bridge. We just kept that, and that's what I mean by networking. And it's not easy to do. Certainly, when I was in my early 20s, I for sure didn't like doing it at all. But it's so much easier to do the more you do it.
definitely. Yeah, it takes practice. It's awkward at first, but it's definitely worth it, at least to try it and
Hmm.
practice it out.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm very, very passionate about paying it forward in our career. I'm also very, very passionate about getting more men into the field. And if I can help out any new grads out there, anyone that has those feelings of, being in their MSW program. I was a first generation grad student. I paid myself through my program financially. It's exhausting, it's scary, but I'm so happy that I took the bet on myself and I did it. And if I could help out anyone in any way with that, then I'm more than happy to do that.
awesome. Well, thank you so much. And Irvin's contact information is in the show notes. If this episode helped you at all, or if it reminded you of somebody who you said, oh, so and so needs to hear this for sure because they're a new grad, they're struggling, they can relate to this. Please share the episode with them. We are not about gatekeeping of information around here. We want all of us to rise. So I thank you so much, Irvin, for your time. It's been great talking to you.